Yesterday we had some very interesting news regarding Smite and HiRez in general. HiRez is splitting up the development studios for the different games within the company. This doesn't mean that HiRez is completely falling apart, but it's more of a restructuring, I would say. But this restructuring comes with changes, and that's what we're going to talk about today, because I know a lot of you guys have been wondering about what this exactly means for Smite and for the other games and for the future of those games. I will talk a little bit about this in general, how the new structure looks like, then I will talk about what HiRez employees have to say about this, and then I will add a bit of my own impressions and expectations that come along with this. So first of all, how was HiRez split? HiRez will remain an entity within the whole organization, but HiRez is now the publisher. Prior to this, HiRez was the publisher and developer of all games. We already saw a little bit of a split earlier this year, and that was for Skillshort Media, which is now the esports segment for HiRez in general. They're still working very closely with HiRez, and they have HiRez employees that partially still ran on the HiRez label anyways, but they are considered their own company basically that can theoretically also work with other games or other companies too. The other studios that will be created on top of that are Titanforge Games, Mojo Games, Heroic Leap Games, and Alacrity Arthouse. These names all kind of match different elements in the games. Titanforge will be the one for Smite, Mojo is an ability from Paladins and will be the studio for Paladins, and Heroic Leap is an ability in Paladins as well as Royale, but referring to Royale here, will be the Royale studio therefore. Alacrity Arthouse has a bit of a different role. It's not responsible for any game, but it's responsible for visual design, for art, especially for 2D art as well, for card arts and all that kind of stuff. And Alacrity also has a bit of a different perspective in how it's going to be used in the future. We'll get into that later. Before that, let's look a little bit at the structure of HiRez that follows from this. Mountain Goat already posted a bit of a draft of how this will look like. We can see HiRez and Skillshort and Alacrity, and then the first party game studios as they're called. Kilgoon explained this a little bit more. First party is not a separate company though, it's just a business unit. HiRez also publishes third-party games from a separate business unit, for example, Paladins Strike. The resulting structure looks a bit like this, though there are obviously details left out in where, for example, the different parts of accounting are and whatnot, but this is the one that's more important for us. We have HiRez Studios as the publisher, Skillshort as the esports department, then we have Alacrity for the art and design. We have the three first-party studios being Titanforge Games, Mojo Games, and Heroic Leap Games, and then we have other third-party games like, for example, Paladins Strike and potentially future mobile games as well. I'm not quite sure where other games like Jetpack Fighter or Hand of the Gods fit in here, as they are, as far as I'm aware, not third party, but they also aren't really under any of the first party companies. Maybe Hand of the Gods will fall under Titanforge, but then again, we haven't really heard anything about these games in ages anyways. Now, what does that mean for us? First of all, HiRez perspective, what they say it means for us and what we can expect. Chris Larson, the now general manager at First Party Studios and also known as the Lord and Savior of OB64, said the following. The establishment of Titanforge, Heroic Leap, and Mojo as standalone studios enables each of our development teams to fulfill their maximum potential and stay hyper-focused on serving their individual player communities. We view game operation as a marathon, not a sprint. Our games are built to provide near-constant updates over many years. By giving each major game its own dedicated studio and identity, we empower them to control their own destiny and focus exclusively on their player communities, while still having access to our leading shared publishing services. So the heavy emphasis here is on no longer having that many shifting employees, I would guess, but rather having employees focused into their job in one of the studios and one of the games and stay with that game and that community. And I think that is a good change, because you don't have to be worried about your favorite employee from a game moving to another game and, no longer contributing to the game that you like them for and what you like their work for. Kilgoon also explained a little bit more about Alacrity. That's correct, our internal central art services team, which formerly made cinematics, handled outsourcing and did some illustration, is now Alacrity Arthouse. As part of this transition, Alacrity's services are available to other studios as well. So this was based on the question if this is only for HiRez or if other studios could basically hire Alacrity to do something for them. And they can. As such, HiRez gives themselves a bit more of an opportunity here to branch out to other studios, work for other studios, and make some extra profit that way or network that way too. And this is by far not the only response we got on the Paladins Reddit. For some reason, the Smite Reddit wasn't very active from the HiRez side, or now from the Titanforge side, whereas the new evil Mojo members, I still have to learn these names a little bit, are all very active in their Reddit and explained a lot and answered a lot of the questions. Alyssa also explained a little bit more here. The Paladins developers have split off into our own studio, Evil Mojo Games. This is a really good thing from both a business and player perspective because it gives the game studios more autonomy to make decisions that are right for their communities and player bases. We're able to focus solely on Paladins and the Paladins community, but still utilize the support services of a publisher. This again also emphasizes that it's more about the games not only being worked on by the same people, but the people also being able to make their own decisions for that one game and not have as much external influence on the design and development process. We'll talk about that more later again. And there's a chain of other replies in the context of the Tencent game, the third-party game being Paladins Strike. Here we learn that skins can't easily be transferred between Paladins and Paladins Strike, or the other way around rather, because they're both built with different engines, Unreal versus Unity, and as such they're not transferable, and that just shows us how separate of an entity those third-party games will be. They have a different engine, they have different people working behind them, they really are in a very different spectrum within the company. But these are obviously all internal opinions. And internal opinions can be biased. They would not tell us if they think this is a bad decision. So it's always interesting to look at some other takes from other people as well. And what I especially find interesting here is seeing what ex-employees think about this decision. And I am following quite a few ex-employees. I'm seeing what they are writing, and none of them has said anything specifically negative about this. Many of them think it's a good decision for the games and it helps them. Some of them think it's a profitable decision at least, and they're not surprised it's being made, but none is really complaining and saying this is horrible and the games are going to die from this. But there could be implications for the games, and I emphasize could be here because obviously I'm not working inside HiRez, so I can't give you anything that is 100% confirmed here. Just speculation that is very likely based on the information that I have and the context of things. I'm not going to look at this through rose-tinted glasses, but I'm also not going to be overly pessimistic, just things that are possible now. First of all, it's in a way moving a little bit away from the HiRez name. HiRez is still a publisher, but every game having its own developer. Alongside with that, you can kind of, branch out a little bit more towards that name. And HiRez name hasn't always been the cleanest with the history of all the games that didn't work out so well and some people still holding a grudge. As such, for some it may be beneficial if HiRez isn't always the first name that is seen. But I think this is a minor thing because HiRez still exists very much. Then there are very likely some sort of financial benefits. It doesn't necessarily have to be tax benefits directly because taxation shouldn't work all that differently. But within Georgia there are some special rules, and there are some things that could, for example, happen when one of the studios would go bankrupt and it would affect the others less, and everything is a bit less linked and kind of stands a bit more by itself. And that, again, is something that should be helpful in most regards, and financial stability or benefit is obviously something that benefits the player as well in the end. If HiRez makes more money, then HiRez is probably happier to experiment around more and have a bit more safety that way. Likewise, games could also, if they are less successful, be sold off easier. You could sell off one of the studios without having to sell off all of them, and that is something that I don't think is completely out of the picture and completely impossible. I'm not saying it is going to happen anytime soon, but I also don't think it would never ever happen. And last but not least, it's kind of hinted at again and again through these posts that the studios will work a little bit more independently, and there's always been this thing of HiRez having a lot of influence on the game, and some people not being that happy with it, not liking the changes that he personally was a part of or decided that would go through. With the split, and from what it sounds like, it's likely that HiRez areas will go a little bit more into the background and not have quite as much influence on the individual games, though that is yet to see, and we probably won't know for sure anyways, because we won't get confirmation on that. But it's something worth keeping in mind, and it's something that is possible, and the replies are kind of giving me that vibe. Likewise, we yet have to see how much will really change. Because when we look at Skillshort, for example, yes, it is separate from HiRez now, but again, everyone was still kind of running under the HiRez name. Everything kind of still felt connected, and it often felt a little bit forced that the separation is there now. So it might not change all too much after all, just, you know, some new names. That's something that's still in the future, and it depends a lot on how HiRez and the individual studios handle that for themselves. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this gave you a better overview and a better understanding of how the new structure of HiRez will be. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, how you feel about these changes. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to stop by with the bell, it really helps me out. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.